Power bills are, of course, an increasing headache for many Australians, and it may be even more so a little later this year. The Essential Services Commission in Victoria has proposed increasing the default offer there by 31%. It's a bit more than in other states. And now a group of social, legal and financial and consumer rights bodies in that state say that planned increase to power prices is unjustified and dangerous. They've made formal submissions to the Essential Services Commission saying the increase will force thousands of Victorians into poverty, hardship and ill health. One of those bodies criticising the proposal is the Victorian Council of Social Service. Its CEO, Emma King, joins us now. Emma, good morning. Give us a rundown of what's happening in your state on the power front.
Oh, good morning. Look, we're looking at, as you mentioned in your introduction, increases of 31% through, a submission that's been made by the Essential Services Commission. So we're waiting for the final outcome there. But when we're looking at a 31% increase to basic power bills this winter, and you put that on top of the increases that we're seeing in terms of housing and food and fuel, and we know that is going to drive a huge number of people into poverty. We know that there's going to be thousands of Victorians who simply will not be able to afford to pay their power bill. And as a consequence, many will do things. So they'll make choices that no one should have to make. So they'll choose between, do you turn the lights on, or do you eat for the week, or do you turn the heater on, or do you buy a medication? Or what we often see is people staying connected to their energy, but really underutilising it. So they won't turn their heater on in winter and they end up really, really sick as a consequence.
It's all about the so-called default offer, that power price increase. Why are Victorian prices higher than most other states? I think in those states the recommendation has been more like 20 or so %.
Look, I think that's a really good question. And, the Essential Services Commission goes through and makes a recommendation based on a host of things, keeping in mind that, the default offer is meant to be a baseline, no-frills power deal available to Victorians. So they regularly review it to take into account cost and market factors that face energy retailers. And this is where part of the sting is, because the proposed, I would say the proposed price hike is unjustified on technical and economic grounds. So, we've been looking at how the ESC calculates the energy company's expenses. And, there's an element here that goes to what profit companies make when it comes to energy. And keeping in mind here that, so we've got a real balance about, do we take into account the profits of retailers for what is an essential service that everyone needs and is critical to people's health and well-being? Or do we take into account actually the need for an essential service? So we think that this is far too weighted towards the energy retailers, towards their profit margins, and instead the balance has got to go back to people and to providing what is an essential service to people.
Well, they would probably say, I guess, it's the price of staying in business and being able to continue to supply reliable power to the state.
When you look at the big four energy retailers, they have made millions of dollars in profits over the last couple of years. A couple of them, it's actually harder to find what their profit margins are because they're not based in Australia, but they're doing very, very well. So I know there is an argument around some of the smaller retailers who are finding it tougher, but in any case, this is an essential service. This is why, when we looked at the last election, I think we saw such resounding support for the SEC in Victoria, because people want power back in public hands again. So
that's the former State Electricity Corporation?
Commission, that's right, because, this comes down to what is an essential service. It's not a luxury good. It's not something that people could or should choose to go without. So I think we've got to pull that back and say, what are the key preconditions that we look at when we set the price of an essential service? Because fundamentally, we've got to make sure that no one misses out. Victorians are doing it really, really tough at the moment. As I said, we're looking at people who are entering into really significant energy stress. They're skipping meals, they're turning off the heater during winter, they're sacrificing other essentials. And this is going to hit those on low incomes, obviously, the most, with people in public housing, people with disability, those with a chronic health issue, but it's also affecting people who've never been impacted before. And our community organisations that help people on the front line with food, etc., are seeing this extraordinary demand at the moment, and this is only going to make it worse.
That's the argument you and other groups have made to the Essential Services Commission. As you say, this suggestion of a 31% offer hasn't been finalised yet. Is that the case? How frequently does it actually get accepted, or does it often get changed as a result of concerns like yours?
Well, I haven't seen in my time an increase anywhere near 31%. So we're supportive of the default offer. We think it's really important. It's really important to have a base, no frills offer. Seeing 31% though is, to be frank, it's alarming. So the ESC looks at, the Essential Services Commission does look at price hikes regularly. We've got this moment where we need to advocate very strongly about what the true impact of this is going to be.
And when might we find out that final figure? When will they decide, Emma?
It is, now towards the end of May.
Okay.
So we've got a little bit of time here, and we need the ESC basically to go back and really reconsider the draft recommendation that they've put out.
Let's see if they take that on board. Thanks for talking to us this morning. Emma King, who's the CEO of the Victorian Council of Social Service, saying something's got to give after the suggestion of a 31% increase in power prices in Victoria. There is a bit going on in that state. Victoria Police